Jiro here from Umbra Games with a review of Titan Quest. No, not the THQ 2006 PC version, not the 2016 PC remastered release, but the console port of that one, available on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, released March 20th, 2018, and on Switch on July 31st. Played cooperatively on PS4 for the review. Titan Quest is an isometric dungeon crawler set in the ancient lands of Greece, Egypt, and the Orient, and you create your hero and battle through legions of monsters, beasts, and undead sent by the Titan Typhon to plague the realms of man. Create your hero and choose two of a variety of ability pools to customize your experience. There are quite a few combinations of ranged ability, melee, and magic classes that can really give you the edge in combat. Now, Titan Quest's original release, as I said, was 2006, and it had a very similar feeling to Blizzard's Diablo 2. Your inventory is a grid where items take up X by Y squares each, and you can shuffle them around to make more room. You have a red HP pool and a blue mana pool where every action except a base attack will consume some. Your character stats will determine how quickly your HP and mana regenerate, and you can use some of the ridiculous amount of gear available through enemy drops and vendors to augment that. And if you had a mouse and keyboard, you'd be clicking to move, clicking to attack, clicking to talk, in that clicky kind of way. Your character has a head slot, chest slot, leg slot, arms, 2 rings, a neck, and an artifact slot, with each piece capable of having increased base damage, percentage bonus to stats, elemental resistances, status resistances, or bonus elemental attack, in addition to providing some armor. Gear comes in colored rarities from white to yellow to green and blue, with completed sets adding additional bonuses. Gear is often gated for classes by a dominant stat threshold, stopping the wrong character from equipping it, i.e. 225 strength for full mage class probably isn't very likely. And there is tons of gear. Chances are when you kill a group of enemies, at least one of them is going to give you something. Most often, especially towards the beginning of the game, a simple, unaugmented white rarity. The game seems to take no discretion on what it drops, so even if you're going full-on intelligence mage build, expect to see a lot of strength and dexterity drops, but hey, that's what shops and vendors are for. There are vendors in most towns that either lean towards magic users or non-magic users, with stocks that refresh at a decent rate, so if you can't find something on the ground, it's always worth stopping by a vendor as you pass through, or collect all the loot and transport back to previous towns to sell what you have and check for new. Now, one thing that seemed odd from time to time was watching your DPS counter move up and down with specific pieces of equipment. I mean, sometimes it was virtually unexplainable. White Gravy and I are both in IT data fields, so we know our maths pretty well, but often had no idea what was going on. We were both mages in our playthrough, and I'd throw on a piece of armor and get a ridiculous change of DPS inexplicably, and White Gravy would put on the same one to no result. We would often pass gear back and forth just to check and see how it affected whom. Pet DPS statistics also weren't always available, so the bonus stats to pets, especially found on rings and other gear, was actually a bit difficult to tell if it was actually doing anything. So while there is a ton of variety of loot, it was difficult to really feel the visceral increase from that gear. Now, perhaps it's just so in tune with the rise of the difficulty curve that without damage numbers showing you your hits, increased health bars on enemies, scaled in the new area with the gear you obtained so subtly, whereas the biggest DPS bumps we felt were from skill tree boosts rather than equipment. So the big question here is how well do the keyboard and mouse translate to a dual-stick controller? And that's kind of where you start to see this game that may be a bit of a rushed port. Though THQNordic has been applying some patches to reduce input lag and such, you'll still notice several moments in any section where you've pressed X to pick something up, or you've let go of the left stick to attempt to stop moving, and your character just isn't the most responsive. Instead of using a simple dual stick set up to aim, your character will attempt to find what it thinks is the best target automatically, and instead of just turning the right stick in the direction you want, you have to aim a cone with a button hold to redirect your attack. White Gravy and I, as I said, both play ranged characters, a decision that was made pretty immediately from the start, as hitting enemies up close just felt kind of awkward, as your character would move to face the oncoming enemy that it chose if you simply just attacked. White Gravy chose the Earth and Spirit classes, making him a conjurer, where he chose to bolster pets from both trees, whereas I went Nature and Storm, creating a druid. My main focus was a devastating ice shard spell and a healing spell. Now, set on the aggressive settings for his pets, they really stand there and do nothing only about, 50% of the time. And then 10% of the time they'd see something off screen and decide to draw us into battle. But to be fair, we had a few occurrences where enemy AI didn't attack us either. Though that wasn't near 50%, it was probably more like 1. Since this core dweller served as our main tank, I would try my best to heal it, and this was made easier by a patch we received about halfway through our playthrough, allowing us to map abilities to the triangle and circle buttons, so I could hold circle to create the cone and release it to heal more accurately. Now, if I wanted to heal myself while in a group, I had to try to create a cone away from everyone else and release it to do so. Now, before this update, the only way to use all abilities was by mapping them to the D-pad, and then you could also map a second set by holding L2 like a shift key and then a direction. But oftentimes creating the cone and aiming and the lag that ensued therein was less efficient, just letting the game kill what it was targeting in the order it wanted. because at least you were doing some damage instead of it just stalling out. One other side effect of having heal mapped to the circle for me is that that's the button you use to cancel out of menus and such. So the game doesn't let you attack unless you have a target, but healing will self-heal or allow you to heal friendly targets. So every time I cancel out of something, from the skills menu to the vendor shops, somebody or something would get healed. We did have a few pet issues. Sometimes White Gravy would be stuck on a sort of auto-follow to one. Using the controller, you couldn't hardly break free. And once somehow just leaving a village, somehow his pet flagged as an enemy, and the only thing he could aim on was shooting down his poor innocent friend. You gain experience from completing the main quest objectives, side quests you pick up, and for slaughtering the masses of enemies that approach you. Upon leveling, you're awarded 3 skill points to apply to your 2 trees, and 2 character points to apply to your base stats, intelligence, strength, dexterity, and the like. If you make a mistake on your skill points, there's a vendor in most towns that will allow you to pay gold to remove points so you can reapply them. Enemies similarly have levels to help you judge difficulty on the foray you're preparing to enter. You will also get a message that difficulty increases as more players enter the game if you're playing multiplayer. If you run out of HP, your character will die, leaving a gravestone, and you'll lose a tiny bit of experience before respawning at the last touched rebirth fountain. If you can make it back to your grave, you can get that small bit of experience back. You can fast travel to town portals at any point by making a player portal, and you can use each other's portals as well. So a lot of times when one person dies, others can make a portal if they respawn too far away to quickly rejoin the battle. Now, speaking of multiplayer, when you log into the game, you can choose to host or join a server if you don't want to play solo. I would usually say that whoever has the better internet connection should be the host, but unfortunately with the array of network issues we had with this game, really didn't seem to make a difference. I'd have a session where the game wouldn't even let me host a server running on a 1 gigabit internet connection, and White Gravy on his 30 megabit per second connection could. We actually never made it a single gaming session broken out over 3.5 months without at least one disconnection. Sometimes it gave us a clean break to the main menu. Sometimes someone stalled out with all their gear dropped and just appearing naked on the screen, standing in place. In fact, it got us in the habit of manually forcing a save several times an hour just to stop lost progress. But even that didn't always help. One side quest required the acquisition of 3 items found outside of the town. Somehow, even though we clearly both picked up all 3 items, we found that I was missing one and White Gravy was missing an entirely different one by the time we got to town and tried to turn our stuff in. Now, often experience gained since the last save would be sacrificed as well, but sometimes just starting the game with clear, okay, I joined your game, I'll log off first to the main menu, okay, I'm out, still suffered in experience or equipment losses. Sometimes on disconnect, sometimes even on death. We would find equipment that was equipped on our person gone. Most often it was the left ring slot, occasionally it was a weapon, and once we even lost an artifact. Now, you see, artifacts have to be created. You find one of the light blue formulas and it will require 3 ingredients to make. The early ones take a specific magic scroll purchased from a vendor, and then 2 completed rune thingies dropped from enemies in pieces. Some require a combination of 3 of the same kind, where some of those beastie ones require 5. There's also a cash fee of all the items that have to be taken to the vendor to make it. So having one artifact disappear after the hard work of assembling it from 80% drops from enemies was a bit frustrating. Not to mention discouraging from even thinking of attempting this game on harder difficulties where gear builds become more essential. Speaking of which, there are 3 difficulties in total, and you must finish it on the first to open the next. Now, this game includes the first expansion, Immortal Throne, so you're looking at 4 acts, doing pretty much every side quest we calculated about 45 to 50 hours total. I was hosting when we beat the game, and a portal opened up from the boss room, so I decided to see what was in it, with which it disconnected White Gravy and took us both to the credits. We both got the trophy for completing the game on normal, but White Gravy lost all of his loot he picked up from the final boss, and my epic difficulty didn't open, while White Gravy's did. We also had a lot of loot pickup problems before one of the patches where literally items fell through the ground. We could see the text and it would hang around the screen for a long time. Now once the patch came, it fixed that issue, but then graphically when enemies would die, their armor would just float above the ground. Picking up loot at first was a chore, trying to highlight what it was you wanted to pick up off the ground. And about 20 hours in, I'm not sure if it was originally there or applied through a patch, one of us accidentally held down the X button and it popped up a window and showed you all the loot around you where you could examine it, even hit square to pick up all the consumables and gold all at once instead of each item individually. Now, graphically, the textures in this game actually look pretty decent, even better when you stay zoomed out. There was some major artifact pop-in of structures, textures for enemies where they would just appear as white models until their color popped in, and even some spell effects would sometimes just show as squares instead of having the real detail. Moving through Immortal Throne, the frame rates started having more and more issues as well. But this quest of titans, going through ancient Greece and fighting mythological beasts, and going through the pyramids and fighting the horrors there, and the less often tapped ancient Orient environment, made for a really amazing journey. As you move from city to city in Greece, it kind of felt like you were actually taking a journey through the Grecian countryside. Main quest objectives were usually long treks to the next city or outpost to find the next exclamation mark. Stumbling across random caves with hidden secrets and side quest objectives made us want to comb the areas pretty thoroughly. Unfortunately, the speech of NPCs and their text wasn't able to be sped up really, and the scrolling text didn't keep in sync with their voice, making it feel like it took forever to hear what somebody was going to say. I think White Gravy said it was like reading an NPC's teleprompter, which slightly degraded our excitement and attachment to these NPCs and their quests. But the World Iron Lore created for Titan Quest can still stand the test of time, aside from the graphical issues I mentioned. It's probably just best to play this game in the PC environment for which it was created, if that's an option for you. Now, White Gravy and I commented at the end that neither of us really dreaded playing the game leading up to our weekly sessions. It had issues that should have probably made us quit several times, but the world, the quests, the loot quantity and diversity, the skill tree character customization were just enough to keep us playing through the glitches that came from all sides, from control glitches and overall poor translations from keyboard to controller, to graphical glitches, to loot pickup glitches, to network issues, to progress loss, and even equipment loss. Rated as an RPG dungeon crawler, this incarnation of Titan Quest would receive a 56 out of 100. But man, those glitches were so bad and so overarching the entire experience in nearly every aspect of the game, I wanted to deduct a pretty heavy 20 points for them. Hopefully they continue to get some patches later, as THQNordic did mention they were talking about releasing the final DLC, Ragnarok, for the console version, but with the quick price drop that happened for physical copies, who knows if they're still planning on even supporting it. This is Giro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.